Benvenuti alla prima puntata dell'Allenatore Podcast. Spero davvero che questa nuova avventura possa piacervi e intrattenervi. Ci tengo a ringraziare in primis voi che mi state supportando e le realtà che stanno credendo in me come il Fantasia Store con i suoi super prodotti, iGrading con le sue label bellissime e Card Market che ci fornisce delle carte singole per i nostri mazzi. Ma adesso passiamo alla presentazione del primo ospite. Non potevo non iniziare questa serie con lui. È uno dei giocatori più titolati e più forti del mondo. Il suo genio e la sua inventiva ce la sogniamo tutti. Finalista dell'ultimo mondiale e vincitore di ogni torneo internazionale esistente del gioco di carte Pokémon, signore e signori, ho il piacere e l'onore di presentarvi Tord Reklev.
L'allenatore podcast.
Ciao Tord, grazie per essere qui. Innanzitutto, come stai?
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm doing great. Just enjoying the summer so far, and I guess a little bit of down period we have now with no big events before Worlds.
Vorrei improntare questa chiacchierata a livello umano, proprio per cercare di conoscere anche la persona che sta dietro al giocatore. Per questo la prima domanda che ti faccio è: chi era Tord da bambino, prima e dopo l'approccio al gioco di carte Pokémon, e come ha iniziato a giocare?
Oh, I see. So I was a pretty shy kid for sure. Very for myself, as many others, I think as well. But I was taught the game by my mom when I was 6 years old. So I was very young, so it's been with me my whole life. But I didn't play tournaments back then, so I was just playing against my mom at home at the kitchen table, and it took some years before I actually realized that people played, events in person, and that was a thing. There was competitions in this game. So I discovered that when I was 11 by an accident, because I was playing the video game and I was, going to the event to download the Deoxys, and I was playing cards, and I was like, "Ooh, that's cool." I'm really good at this game because I beat my mom all the time. So I should definitely be playing with these guys, and I showed up the next week on the local league, right? And I figured out I was really bad. I was terrible, and they destroyed me. So that was how I kind of got into it.
Vado subito con l'altra domanda. Quando hai realizzato che essere un giocatore di carte Pokémon potesse diventare la tua professione, il tuo futuro, lo immaginavi quando hai iniziato da piccolo o è capitato per caso?
I don't think it was ever the plan either. It was something that just happened. I had a relatively normal life path set with education and trying to get my bachelor's degree and everything. But with the announce of the changes in 2017 or so, it started to look a little bit more feasible to play more Pokemon, right? And like travel around the world and play. But even then I wasn't thinking about it as like a real career option. But I had a really good streak of events in like 2018 where I won a lot of ICs, and then I managed to make a decent amount of money there that I didn't have to do a lot of other part-time jobs or anything. But I'm living in Norway, and like the income level here is relatively high. So even then I was thinking that no, it's a good amount, but like you spend a lot of money traveling as well. So like all in all, it's not sustainable for long goal, and especially very hard to perform at that level like every time. You need to be a little bit lucky, which I was as well. So I think it was more like in recent times to say, like after COVID was when I started to go like truly all in and only play the game as more than a hobby.
Hai avuto altre passioni a parte il gioco di carte? Te lo chiedo perché io ho un'altra grandissima passione che è la musica, e devo dirti che faccio fatica adesso a dedicarmici perché seguendo il meta in un modo maniacale non ci riesco.
I mean, that's awesome. That's really cool to hear. My main interest is definitely Pokemon, I think. That's by far the thing I'm doing the most in my life, especially now that I made it sort of my career and everything. But I do like other things as well. I think the stuff I spent most time with is probably playing games. I try to play like all the big mainland games of like Nintendo and the From Software, so like Elden Ring, Dark Souls, like Zelda, Mario. Um, a lot of like very fun games. I used to play a lot of StarCraft when I was a little younger, and I also like to play a lot of tennis. Like so these are all like games, but in different forms and shapes, right?
Ok, sure.
But games and strategy games have always been very fun to me.
Cool.
Hearthstone, yeah.
Negli ultimi tempi si sono approcciate sempre più persone al gioco, me compreso. Iniziare per me è stata un po' come una cura per non pensare alle cose brutte della vita e ritrovare quella leggerezza che si aveva da bambini nel giocare proprio a carte. Che consigli ti senti di dare a chi inizia questa nuova avventura?
It's definitely an exciting time to be starting, especially with all the new changes announced. Not sure if you want to touch on that, but
Sure.
um, I think if you're starting out, then just use all the really good resources we have online because you have so much readily available to you in terms of stats, deck lists, how the system works in the first place, right? Because that's oftentimes something that if you're a new player, you are kind of struggling a little bit with, right? Like what's the point system, and what's a league cup, what's a regional, like how does this work, right? So try to spend a little bit of time in the beginning trying to figure out what everything is, and then you can try to make a plan from there. But I also think not take things too serious, because the main goal of the game should be to have fun. Even I that have this as a career, my main goal is still to have fun, right? Like along the way. I think that should be the goal if you're choosing to put a lot of time and effort into something like Pokémon again.
C'è un sogno o un progetto che vorresti realizzare sia nel gioco che nella vita in generale?
I feel, especially when I started out, I accomplished more in the game than I could ever dream of. So I'm like already extremely, satisfied and happy. I know a lot of people put kind of some pressure on me to try to win the World Championship because that's kind of the thing we're missing from the accomplishment list. But I don't think I would be too sad if I never got there. I think I got close enough a couple times, and I think I'm satisfied with that again. But of course, it would be very fun if I managed to get there someday. But I think currently I'm just very fulfilled, if that makes sense. I don't have anything huge I really want to strive for, if that makes sense.
Credo che ai massimi livelli di ogni lavoro, passione, passatempo, c'è sempre un momento in cui si fa più fatica. C'è stato mai un momento in cui hai detto ok, basta, smetto di giocare? Se sì, ti va di raccontarcelo?
I never reached a point of that in Pokemon. I never said I want to quit the game. I think it's some sentimental value to it as well, because again, like I played this game my entire life, right? Since I could speak or read, I've been playing Pokemon cards. And of course, first few years just at home, but later on, kind of an all-time consuming activity next to studies and friends and whatnot. So I know I gave this answer like a few years ago when I asked the same thing. I think I'm going to give the same one again, and I'm going to keep on playing until I think it's not fun anymore. That's how long I will be playing, and I'm still having fun, so we'll keep on going.
Ok. Quanto ha inciso Pokémon nella tua vita? Mi spiego meglio. Ci sono stati bivi in cui ti sei ritrovato, ad esempio un lavoro che ti allontanasse dal gioco?
I think that you have time for what you want to have time for. So I always been able to play quite a lot of Pokemon. Of course, I'm also relatively privileged. I come from loving family with not unlimited resources, but like some resources that help me gain time so that I can focus on what I want to do. I even took a year in the military. I had like a duty year, and I was still playing a lot of Pokemon. So I think you can get time for mostly what you want to get time for.
Sure.
If that answers the question. So.
Come organizzi il tempo nella tua giornata? In base al gioco, al testing, allo studio del meta comunque? Di tutto questo tempo, hai anche dei momenti dove ti rilassi e non ci pensi o è una costante? Questo è più un consiglio che cerco per me che una domanda, insomma.
I think this one varies quite a lot, honestly. I usually go in waves where I dedicate a lot of time to something, and then dedicate very little time to something else, and then like the balance can be a little bit off sometimes, for sure. And I will probably have to admit that the balance in terms of like Pokemon versus taking care of myself oftentimes is a little bit too high on the Pokemon side. And that is definitely something I'm working actively on, trying to commit more time to myself again. I definitely feel like I'm in a lucky enough position, at least now, to try to spend more time on myself again, that I don't need to be working myself to death anymore, and I can rest a little bit. That's what I'm trying to do now, at least.
Fare tornei significa viaggiare nella propria nazione, nel mondo, conoscere sempre nuove persone, nuove culture. Questo lato a me personalmente piace tantissimo, è una delle motivazioni per cui lo faccio anche. Questa cosa a te piace? Ami viaggiare?
So I think a lot of people will be surprised by this as well, but I do close to zero traveling in my own country. I only travel out of it. But in my city, we don't we have a local league. It's run by my brother now. I founded it back when we moved here, but we only have like one. So there's very limited amount of cups and challenges we can actually play in, right? And it takes me about the same amount of time to get to another one than it would to take me to get to a regional. So I just go to the regionals instead. And instead of having multiple long journey trips for the other events again. So it means that if I want to compete at level I want to, then I need to make the best out of the fewer chances I get again, right? But say to someone who plays the game very casually, I still obviously get to attend way more events than them again, right? I just don't get to attend as many events as like the other top players do most of the times.
Ho una piccola curiosità. Hai mai giocato altri TCG? Perché io li ho provati un po' tutti, però ora mi sono focalizzato su quello di Pokémon e non riesco a farmi entrare in testa altro, cioè non ce la faccio proprio.
Yeah, I played a lot of other TCGs as well, actually, or card games. The one I liked the most was Hearthstone, because it was like very convenient. You could play, from home on your computer. Program was like very well designed. It was also like very, very popular, when it was released, and like the first couple of years after that. So when the hype was like at the biggest, I was playing quite a lot, and that was very fun. I actually won Norwegian Nationals in Hearthstone a couple of times as well, or like the equivalent to it. So that was fun. I reached rank 1 on the server a few times as well, like the European server in Hearthstone. So that was also cool. And I also played a little bit of Magic as well. That's more like recent times, like a few years ago. I never played much real life events or anything there though. But I played Arena. I reached Mythic, which is like the equivalent to Legend in Magic. So that was also fun. But I'm very much like just a casual player in that game, I think. So Hearthstone I was like a little bit more seasoned in, I think.
Voglio farti i miei più sinceri complimenti perché vedendo le tue partite mi è presa voglia proprio di mettermi in gioco anche in questo percorso che sto facendo da creator, da giocatore. Questo mi ha ispirato molto perché ho iniziato a giocare dopo aver visto il tuo percorso ai mondiali dell'anno scorso. Ho capito che ti piace azzardare e non andare mai nello scontato, insomma. Correggimi se sbaglio, ovviamente. A proposito di questo azzardo, quanto è importante per te il deck building e l'effetto sorpresa? E qual è il tuo processo di realizzazione del deck?
Oh, that was a fun one for sure. I think everyone has like a different process. So my personal process is that I like to play a lot of games against myself and against just random opponents on ladder as well, like online. I find that pretty fun playing with friends. But I think most of my deck building process is just me staring at the deck list and playing games in my head, which sounds really boring, but I that's like basically what I'm doing, the most with my time again. So I find a lot of fun in it. I think deck building has always been, important, but I think especially in the recent years in the information era we are in right now, when you have so much information and access to deck list and everything, that sort of skill is less needed. Like, so you have so much information to draw from, right? And people like decks and people to look at, that you don't actually have to reinvent the wheel every time. I think it's much more important that you're just technically good at the game, so you know how to play a deck. I think that you can play completely vanilla 60 of like any top archetype, and if you play that well, you can win any event. Like, it doesn't matter. So again, like you don't need to reinvent the wheel if you want the chance to develop an event. It really doesn't matter. And most of the events that was won, like this season, last season, if you look at the list, it's usually nothing very impressive with them. They're usually like very, very, simple and predicted to be good going into the event.
Arriviamo ai giorni d'oggi. Il mondiale si sta avvicinando, tu ne hai fatti tanti e non oso immaginare l'emozione che si prova ogni volta. Un giocatore del tuo livello ha già deciso il deck o è un po' come me che anche prima di una challenge è indeciso? Come ti stai preparando ad affrontarlo?
My process is kind of figured out at this point. So what I usually do is, at the beginning, I try to gather as much information as possible. So I look at what everyone else is up to, and I try out and look at all the different top meta decks and see if I can come to some sort of consensus. And I like to try to lock in a deck relatively early in advance, and then just work a lot on that deck. And sometimes you lock in a deck that's really good and it's worthwhile, and sometimes you don't. But as long as you're not like flick-flacking between a bunch of decks, then it means that you can just get really, really good at like one thing. And as we already talked about, right? If you play a good deck well, then that's more important than reinventing the wheel on something. So like it's not necessary. Oh, it's of course very cool whenever you can pull it off, right? But it's not necessary. You don't have to do that. So currently we're like 2 months away. I don't have my deck yet, I will admit, but I'm working on it. I am looking into things.
Quali mazzi secondo te faranno dei buoni risultati al mondiale? Pensi che l'arrivo dei Dusclops e Dusk Noir possa far trionfare finalmente Charizard, o Gardevoir non lo ferma nessuno? Dei nuovi mazzi giocabili dopo l'uscita di Segreto Fiabesco, quale ti incuriosisce di più?
That's a good question. I think the Dusty line is really good. I can explain why. So in a lot of games, you kind of want to put your opponent on odd prices when you're using a 2-price deck. So what Dustner can provide you is a way to steal an extra price, where you can say snipe something and get a price card, where what you basically give both players a price, right? But the price card you are taking is irrelevant, and the price card your opponent is taking is not. Like, they still need X amount of tax to win the game, right? So I think that's kind of what makes Dusknoir strong, that you have that play available. It also allows you to do some things that you previously couldn't, right? Say your opponent is at 2 prices and you're at 3. With Dusknoir, you can take a 3-price turn, right? And steal the game against some decks. Like that is obviously pretty strong, right? So it has some merits, and of course it has some combo potential with cards that only works when you're behind. So Conte Catcher, Charizard EX does more damage, Roxanne, right? So you can activate very strong effects like just forcefully without your opponent having to take a prize card themselves, like you just give it to them. So Dusknoir seems strong. There's also like a few other like really good cards as well. I think the other big one is probably Kyurem. Those are probably like the two strongest cards from the set, Dusknoir and Kyurem. Kyurem is like a really good tech against the Lost Zone decks, but it's also, you know, an amazing inclusion for the Regidrago decks as well, giving it like definitely a good boost again. It was not a bad deck already, but with the Kyurem, it has like a really high power level ceiling. So yeah, there's multiple other cards from the set as we're talking about as well, but like those two are the biggest ones at least.
Proprio in questi giorni sono arrivate le novità che riguardano i cambiamenti per la stagione 2025, cambiamenti veramente netti rispetto all'ultima stagione. Io personalmente penso che questo nuovo sistema sicuramente alzerà il livello del gioco e dei giocatori, rendendo tutto ancora più bello e competitivo. Ma vedendo l'andamento e la crescita numerica dei partecipanti dell'ultimo anno, ho paura che molti rinuncino in partenza, insomma. E magari una via di mezzo tra quello che era e quello che sarà sarebbe stato meglio. Tu che ne pensi? Ti va di darci un parere a riguardo?
So I spent a lot of time last day to just read the reactions and people's thoughts and meanings on this topic. So I have something to make up some information to make up my own mind with as well. And I have some mixed feelings here. So I think one of the incentives they had for doing this is because they're trying to make the Waltz Invite more fair, actually. But this is in relation to how the Waltz Invites works in Asia again. And this is actually the biggest regions for Pokemon, believe it or not, right? Even if we don't think it is like over here because we don't see too much to them, but they have the most players, like actually have the most players, right? We think it's America, but it's not, right? So, and their systems are brutal. You need to be in the top X or place really highly at multiple thousand people events. So this is basically just adopting the same thing, right? Like I think for years we have had an unreasonably easy time getting a Waltz Invite compared to them again, right? So you could say that, okay, they could have, instead of, making our invite harder, they could have made their invite easier instead, right? And like, but that also seems difficult with the growth of the game again, right? You could argue that you could still do it, but then you would have like a gigantic waltz. I don't think that would be, too terrible either, but it's also very unpredictable as well. So I can definitely see it from like a logistic standpoint, right? Like you still need to book venues, right? And you still need to produce the merch. Not like both of these things are solvable by all means, right? But say if you were in charge and you had a decision to make things like extremely easy for yourself or extremely difficult, right? Then, I get it, right? But of course it creates some outrage. And of course there is the argument that like Worlds could or should be more exclusive as well, right? As it is, the pinnacle of the hobby, right? And it like technically shouldn't be easy to get there either. But I also do fear a little bit for the fact that you kind of want it to seem achievable, right? Because you want people to go for it, right? You want them to have a chance of like you don't want to burst people's bubble. You want them to go to events and try and now people are a little bit more disincentivized because they now already early in the season realize that it's less obtainable as there is less spots again, right? I think the biggest complaint about the new system I've seen, like the change most people said they would implement to kind of fix it, is that they think the ICs should have a best finish limit of 1 instead of 3, as they're worth more than twice the amount of points as the regionals are worth, right? So you will definitely have a leg up on the competition if you go to all the ICs. I do think that people fail to realize that I don't think it will be as big of a problem like the best finish limit 1 on IC thing than people expect, because they still did like one step in the right direction with like sharing best finish limit with regionals as well, which means that like instead of going overseas to an IC, if you play another regional, it's not as good, but it still helps making up for missing out on one, right? As in the last system, there was no cap on ICs. They were just like immensely broken, right? As they were just added on top to everything else you were doing. But now at least they're like sharing best finish limit with the regionals again. I don't think the system is perfect at all, but I get the reasoning behind why they made the decisions they made, right? And I don't think it's outrageous like in either direction either. It seems all right, but again, like I think there is a little bit of a concern that you will have some players not wanting to try as much anymore, right? I think it's just like a big blow initially for people, right? They're like, oh, this ruins everything, right? But we just need to calm down for a week or two, and then I think it will like go more or less back when it's settled that is the system again. In general, people don't really like change. Like change is scary. It's just like human nature. So we'll see how it all works out, though. And I think that it's been said before, but Wolves doesn't have to be the only thing, right, to competing for. Back in the day, Wolves was extremely important to me, at least, as like kind of the highlight of my season, as like that was the big international event. Like that was the one time a year I felt like I could try to prove myself among the best. But literally, like every IC and like a bunch of the regionals as well, they're almost at Wolves level, caliber anyway. There's like essentially all the top players will be there. It's the same organizers, like as for Wolves, it's like everything is the same, right? Like the experience isn't that different to what it was back in the day. But when I could only go to my locals, and it was either that or Wolves, and obviously the jump is big, right? But like I don't think the jump is as big anymore. Like you still get a lot of the same experience, like regardless. So I think Wolves is at this point just a little bit overhyped, and as at least my opinion on it.
Yeah, certo. Ritornando al viaggio e l'esperienza torneo, non so perché, ma io in ogni luogo che visito ho la capacità di creare ricordi belli, imbarazzanti, divertenti, tragici. Qual è stato il momento più assurdo che hai vissuto in questi viaggi per i tornei? Sia divertente o se c'è stato un momento brutto che hai vissuto?
Oh, there's definitely like one story I have that sticks out, and it was quite some time ago. It was like about 10 years ago. I was playing an event in the Netherlands. This was before the ICs. So this was back when we had the European Challenge Cup, which was basically the IC for Europe back in the day. But it was not an IC. It was just big, the biggest event we had like of the year. And I was much younger back then. Barely legal age for drinking. And I was out having out having drinks with my friends, and we're at the bar and like joking around, and it was relatively innocent, I think, but there was a bicycle just like in the middle of the road, just tipped over, right? And some of my friends thought it was a great idea to like rise it up and like sit on it and like try to ride it, right? But it was locked, so like they couldn't move or anything. And I'm like, okay, it still sounds fine, right? And then like kind of put it down. And then like one of them look over their shoulder and they see some police in riding on horses. Like I still didn't think it was like a big deal, but then like the friends had a great idea of running. We're like, run! And then it looked like we did something wrong, right?
Yeah.
And then we didn't run very far. We just ran around the corner. And then obviously like they followed us on horses, like came after us. Like long story short, they just took two of us at random. I didn't even touch that bike, but I got picked, and they arrested me or like put me in a cell for like the night for like drunken behavior. And I got this little funny note that said like they didn't speak well English or good English, so it said like toot the bike and disturb the peach instead of the peace. So, that was pretty funny. I still get like chirped and bullied by my friends like years later for being like the bad guy.
In tantissimi nel mondo si ispirano a te per il gioco. Che sensazione provi a riguardo? Senti il peso dell'aspettativa ad ogni torneo o la vivi con leggerezza?
Oh, I did. This is definitely been one of the like adjustments for me as a person as well, because I've been going through most of my life being relatively antisocial and not being too much in the light or center of attention or anything, and it's definitely still a little bit weird for me to be so much in the limelight basically for Pokemon again, and it is a weird feeling for sure. I try to take the role responsible, because I know there is a lot of people that try to imitate me, or some kids even that look up to me, right? So I want to try to set a good example at the very least, right? So I'm trying to weight my words relatively careful, and I want to appear as someone they could actually look up to as well. As far as like the game goes, I also feel the weight a little bit there, so I feel a little bit of pressure to perform as well. So with that, I do put in maybe a little bit more time and effort than I probably should even, right, before events. But I do believe that time and effort equals result, right? Like effort usually equals result in most things you do. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But sometimes I can be a little bit stressed. I think like the closest ones to me can attest to that as well. That before ICs and before Worlds, then like my mind is very floating. I'm basically thinking about Pokemon 24/7. Like I'm like very stressed about it, and wanting to like do my best again.
Thank you.
Like an important exam basically.
Sure. Dietro a un giocatore che vince tanto ci sono anche tante sconfitte, ovviamente. Che rapporto hai con perdere un torneo, un match? Te la prendi con te stesso? Ti sprona a fare sempre meglio? O non te ne frega niente, semplicemente? Hai un consiglio per chi ci guarda riguardante la sconfitta proprio?
I think in general it's a lot easier to try to do some self-reflection if you lost than if you won. Because if you won, you think that you did everything correctly a lot of the time, right? So then the self-reflection and the critical thinking can be difficult, right? Because you're like, oh, but I got there, I did it, right? So, I try to take everything as a learning experience, but especially losses as well, because as humans, they're connected with emotions, so they usually tend to create stronger memories for us. So it's a lot easier to remember when you went wrong, or like when you had a had a harsh loss again. But with anything, I think like self-reflection is very important, and like critical thinking. And you should never think that like you're doing everything correctly. And like you should always look for ways to improve, look for flaws, look for what like you're not doing correctly right now. I had multiple tournament wins even where I'm not like very happy with how I played as well. Like where I did a lot of mistakes, where I like took unnecessary risk, and it played out fine that time, but next time maybe it wouldn't go the same way. So and of course some tournaments I've done relatively poorly at compared to what I want to do, at least, right? And then that's also a good time for self-reflection as well. I think in recent memory, the time I went like wrong the hardest was 20, what was it? It was like the Vikavolt year when I decided to play Vikavolt for Worlds, and I had like a very terrible record at the end, and I felt like I couldn't really do anything. Like I was just sitting there and like reevaluating my whole entire testing process and thinking, how did I end up here? How is this the deck I have in my hand? It's just felt so much weaker in the event than it did in theory and in some few testing games. That's kind of when I realized that I have to stick with like my own beliefs and thoughts, and try to not get influenced by the people around me, and kind of trust yourself type of thing. That is so important.
Hai progetti per il tuo futuro in questo ambito? Come si vede Tord nei prossimi 10-20 anni? Non lo so.
Is a lot of time for sure. I think in an ideal world, in a dream world, I would still be playing. I'm not sure how sustainable or achievable that actually is, but I think this sort of say profession or anything should be treated as like enjoy it while it lasts type of thing, because you never know what could happen, right? Like next year Pokemon could say, oh, we're just actually going to dissolve organized play. It will just not be any tournaments anymore. That's it. Thanks for playing. But we're moving on to other things now. And I'm like, okay, that could happen, right? You never know. So it's essentially I'm trying to take like one year at a time, and then we kind of see where it leaves us. But I don't think anyone can realistically hope to do it for like the entire life. But obviously, it would be very fun if that was the case. But I could imagine that I one day would have to move on to other things. But at this point, I'm such a committed gamer that maybe I would try to move on to another game instead, right? So.
L'ultima domanda che ti faccio è la più semplice, è quella che tutti magari si chiedono. Qual è il tuo Pokémon preferito?
Favorite Pokemon? Oh, I think a lot of people know this one already, but it's Celebi. I usually bring like a. I'm pretty open with that one. So it's Celebi. My favorite color is green. I'm not quite sure how it happened, but like it was some sort of connection when I was little that just happened. Oh, this is like a green Pokemon. It's like a little fairy. It's my lucky Pokemon. Okay, that's it. That's the one. I need a favorite Pokemon. That's the one, and then I kind of snowballed from there. So and I really like the fourth movie as well. It's called like Pokemon Forever. And Celebi is like the main character there, or like main Pokemon. So, I watched that one a bunch. That was good when I was growing up. Favorite card? This one is pretty tricky. I think I had the most success at the events with Zoroark, and I think Zoroark is the card that most people, at least back in the day, kind of connected me with. So when people ask me to sign cards, it's usually like a Zoroark from the people that played for a while. for like the majority that started out the last few years, right? Because there's so many players. I'm usually more connected with Gardevoir, as I played Gardevoir to finals of UIC and Worlds. And I really like Gardevoir as well. It's also like a really cool card, and we had good success with that one too. And that was also the deck I managed to get printed as well. So that is a Worlds deck you can buy now, which is really cool, by the way. I was ecstatic about that.
Yeah, sure.
I was also like on my kind of bucket list of things I tried to accomplish. So, but it's a difficult one. I would have to say Zoroark or Gardevoir. I probably go with Zoroark.
Tord, io ti ringrazio per essere stato qui con me, è stata davvero una bellissima chiacchierata, spero che ti sia piaciuto anche a te e anche a chi ci guarda, spero che apprezzi, insomma. Buona fortuna per il mondiale e ci vediamo in giro per i prossimi tornei.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That's really cool. And thanks for having me. I think a lot of questions were really fun to talk about as well.
Thank you.
And I also haven't had like any really good outlet for like my thoughts on the changes to the new system either. So I'm happy we got to talk about that today. And so if anyone is wondering what my opinion is on this, they can now be referenced to this interview again, right? So I thank you for that. That's really good.
Thank you. Ciao Tord.
Have a great rest of your day, guys. I'll see you later.
Io vi ringrazio per essere stati fino a qui, spero che questa intervista vi sia piaciuta e se vi va di supportarmi lasciate un like e un commento, mi aiutereste tanto a crescere, a portarvi questi tipi di contenuti. Vi ricordo anche che avete lo sconto del 5% sul Fantasia Store con il codice allenatore 5, trovate qui il link in descrizione, se usate anche questo link mi supportate, e lo sconto del 10% su iGrading con il codice allenatore 10, vi lascio comunque il link qui sotto. Ci tenevo anche a ringraziare colui che mi ha accompagnato in questa intervista, dato che il mio inglese, sì, lo capisco bene, ma ho comunque bisogno di supporto. Grazie Ste.
Alla grande.
Ci vediamo al prossimo Ci vediamo al prossimo video. Ciao!